Welcome to Pleasure in the Pause, a podcast dedicated to inspiring midlife women to feel more connected to their bodies, pleasure, and power through menopause and beyond. I am your host, Gabriela Espinosa, and each week we'll dive into informative and thought provoking conversations with fascinating women sharing their stories and expertise on pleasure and sexuality, menopause, embodiment, and female empowerment. My intention is for you to shift the way you think and feel about pleasure and sexuality and have you be the best advocate for your body in and out of the bedroom. I want to leave you feeling that pleasure has no age limit or expiration date. So if you're ready to say yes to your pleasure, then hit subscribe and let's get started. In this first mini episode, I would like to share with you a little bit about my personal story, reasons for embarking on this path of female pleasure, and why I believe it's important for every midlife woman to access this knowledge. And do stay till the end because I'll be leaving you with a free, juicy resource for you to access. So let's start with perimenopause. When it came knocking at my door unannounced, it was like the light to my libido switched off, and I was left totally in the dark. I didn't feel like myself anymore. I felt stressed, overwhelmed, anxious, kept making the usual excuses. Not tonight, honey. I'm too exhausted. Or worse yet, sometimes I would just go through the motions, forfeiting my pleasure to please my partner. I had no idea who to turn to because I actually didn't want to talk about it. I felt shame. Does this mean I'm getting old? Is my sex life over? I had no language or understanding of what was going on, so I could talk about it to my husband, doctors, or even friends. Does this sound familiar? Well, if it does, you are not alone. Between 68 to 70% of midlife women report changes to their libido as they move into menopause. Now, we don't want to put the blame solely on menopause because decrease in desire in women is so multifactorial. And I've mentioned a few of these factors: stress, fatigue, overwhelm, and there are lots of others that we'll cover in upcoming episodes. But let's just say that the perimenopause to menopause timeframe is when women take notice and report these changes. And what I hear from so many of my clients when they begin to experience these changes is how little they know. We realize, and this was my experience too, that there is so much about pleasure and sexuality that we have not been taught. And this not knowing starts for many of us in our family of origin and in the culture we grew up in. For me, sex was never spoken about in my family. The only talk I ever received was from my grandmother, who, when I became a teenager, would often sternly repeat to me, "Your body is a temple, Gabriela. Respect it and don't let anyone in." And I knew what she was talking about. I mean, I was acutely aware that sexuality was a natural expression of being female. Whether it was the way the women in my family dressed in their plunging necklines, or billboards of Brooke Shields and nothing coming between her and her Calvins, Hollywood movies, or the covers of Cosmopolitan magazine, I saw that these expressions of being female were everywhere. Yet they were at odds with the messages I received as I moved into womanhood. Be a nice girl. Don't dress that way. Don't be a whore. Save yourself for marriage. What are people going to think? I sensed an intense fear over accessing knowledge that brought me closer to my true sexual nature. And let's face it, female pleasure and female sexual energy has long been viewed as taboo, something we keep secret. The irony, of course, is that we've all been brought into the world through this very energy we fear. As women, we are conditioned to believe that it's shameful or dirty. And as a result, unhealthy narratives shape our bodies and our sexuality. Add to this inadequate sex education, which focused on abstinence to avoid pregnancy and STDs. It's no surprise we're left looking to Hollywood or the covers of Cosmopolitan magazine for guidance. We then arrive to midlife, experience the roller coaster of hormones, our bodies change, our libidos are nowhere to be found, and the relationship with our partners and ourselves is impacted. And we feel like we've lost a part of ourselves and tried to make sense of it all. We then get frustrated or angry because we realize how much we have suppressed our desires, dismissed our pleasure, or given it away. You may wake up one day, just like I did, take a good look at yourself in the mirror and ask, who am I as a sexual being? After asking that question to myself several times, I decided to take pleasure into my own hands. I've spent the last 15 years traveling around the world, researching and learning from top experts in the fields of pleasure and sexuality, and learning some of the most powerful mind body tools to awaken my sensual body, become fully present to pleasure, and enjoy the most fulfilling intimacy and sexual satisfaction. And I want this for you too. I'm so excited that a lot of the experts I've learned from, who I consider mentors and who have influenced my calling to become a menopause and female pleasure coach, will be joining me here on Pleasure in the Pause podcast. And many of the mind body practices and educational resources I've collected over 15 years of coaching and guiding hundreds of women to connect to their bodies and their pleasure will be housed on pleasureinthepause.com, an online platform of digital courses, coaching programs, and resources for you to embark on the journey of exploring and reclaiming your pleasure. One of the most important things that I have learned and know to be true is that midlife can be a new chapter in our sexual lives to awaken newfound pleasure and feel more confident in our own skin, both in and out of the bedroom. In the Eastern traditions, sexual energy and pleasure is seen as essentially energy, your life force. Chi. It feeds your vitality, your sense of aliveness, spontaneity, creativity. It is the current of energy that flows not just through us, but all around us. And because menopause marks the end of our reproductive cycles, which have culturally and physiologically shaped our identity and roles as women, we can redefine what sexual pleasure looks and feels like to us. We can return to the remembrance of our connection to this life force energy that so many of us are longing for. Because when you connect to this energy, your sensuality and sexuality flows freely and you feel alive, magnetic, inspired. Life is flowing through you and it spreads into all areas of your life, your work, your relationships, your community, and how you show up in the world. Your pleasure is not selfish or indulgent. It is essential to your overall health, happiness, and longevity. So I'd like to invite you to pause for a moment. Perhaps roll your shoulders, shake away any tension. Let out a long, big exhale and bring your hands anywhere on your body that feels comfortable, either on your heart center, your belly, or your legs. And softly close your eyes. And I'd like to invite you to consider the following journaling prompt. What is my relationship to pleasure? What is my relationship to pleasure? You may feel a little bit of resistance to this question and just notice what that resistance is trying to tell you. You may notice a little tenderness or vulnerability. You may not even have an answer just yet, and that's okay. Just notice what comes up for you when you consider this reflection. What is my relationship to pleasure? And honor whatever arises for you in this moment. And as you softly open your eyes again, have a little look around the room that you're in. I'd like to invite you to take pen to paper and write down whatever came up for you. Whatever came up for you, what words, feelings, sensations, emotions came up for you in this question. What is my relationship to pleasure? So, this is part of the exploration we do in my signature pleasure upgrade program. You get to the root of what is holding you back from experiencing deep and fulfilling pleasure, looking at your inherited narratives and limiting beliefs. We then move on to the level of your nervous system, taking you from flight, fight, and freeze to feeling safe and at home in your body. I guide you in science backed mindfulness practices to bring you into the full awareness and presence of pleasure in your body. And then we use the power of touch, breath, movement, sound to explore what lights you up from the inside out. And with all of this self knowing, you develop the communication skills to express your deepest desires. Imagine lighting that inner spark again in your relationship, feeling good in your own skin, fueling your life with a continual source of pleasure, aliveness, and vitality. Are you ready to say yes to your pleasure? Then click on the link below to receive my free gift to you, the 7-day Pleasure Body Journal. 7 journaling prompts plus a bonus to get you to connect with your body and reflect on what pleasure feels and looks like to you. It's time to begin that new chapter of awakening pleasure in midlife. Thank you so much for listening in. And remember, your pleasure matters.